the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances.
Kamala Harris has still not had any one-on-one interview with anyone in the media, let alone a press conference. She hasn't had any unscripted moment that isn't on a teleprompter and sort of created for the television cameras, except last night. We had one unscripted moment. We're going to take a look at it. But first, here's what the scene was. It was at Joint Base Andrews in Washington, D.C. First, she had her personnel set up a podium for her to speak from a binder. She couldn't just come out and just speak extemporaneously to the media. No, first they set up a podium, and then she walked over, and then she went to her binder, and then she opened her binder, and then she started giving her remarks. And then after she gave her remarks, and it was time for the media actually to ask her some questions, she did this.
Thank you all. Madam Vice President, will you be meeting Evan and Paul when they return?
And that was that. No questions from the media. I mean, she did demonstrate that she could walk up the larger flight of stairs to the airplane, so I guess there's that. Then later in the evening, as the rescued hostages that were imprisoned in Russia were returned to their families in a fantastic and very patriotic American scene, Kamala Harris was there, and here was her moment. Here was her moment to say something to the media for the first time since being placed in this position as the presumptive nominee for the Democrats. She had an unscripted moment. Let's take a look.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
Wow. That was, well, maybe this is why she's not unscripted. Akash, we'll start with you. That's Kamala Harris.
I'm almost as much of a loss for words as she was in that little segment. Russia is not our ally. I don't know what she's talking about. Yes, obviously diplomacy matters, and it was a fantastic day to get those Americans back home after what has just been an absolute nightmare situation. But again, Larry, the media is going to allow her to do this. And so we can sit here and complain about them all we want. It is on us to prosecute the case against Democrats up and down the ballot. Americans for Prosperity has been doing it in states across the country with the Bidenomics campaign, holding these Democratic senators and members of the House accountable who voted for the spending bills, talking about the border crisis at secureborder.secureamerica.com. We've got real solutions. We've got to point out the problems they created, the solutions that we have as conservatives, because again, if it's just a scripted campaign about the historic nature of who she is and how great she is in front of a teleprompter, make no mistake, she could win this election again. But if we make it about the issues where they're vulnerable, demand and force her to answer tough questions, and Democrats who are running for Senate, running for House, running for governor, running for local dog catcher, own Bidenomics, own the inflation crisis, own the border crisis, then conservatives are going to be fine. Otherwise, she'll do exactly what she did in that first clip, get up in front of a teleprompter and be better than Joe Biden and maybe even better than Donald Trump. And that might be all the American people need to see.
Yeah, listen, Elaine, I agree. We got to do this, and you want to press her on the issues. But if the media isn't going to do their job, we have to point it out, and we have to, if it's possible, shame them into actually stepping up and vetting this person. She wants to be president.
Absolutely. I sent that same clip to my team this morning because I said the real Kamala is still in there when she doesn't have the teleprompter. And it made me recall how much Barack Obama was criticized when he ran in the first time about his teleprompter use. But there's a difference between Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, as much as they're trying to make her the new Barack Obama. is that Barack was relatable to Americans. He also could speak from the cuff. He did well on interviews, obviously with friendly media, but he did do well speaking from the cuff. He just did really depend on a teleprompter when he was giving a speech. Kamala showed again that when she's not on that teleprompter, she really can't speak. And so the media does need to hold her accountable. And if they won't, then conservatives need to keep talking about Bidenomics. And it's okay to still call it Bidenomics because she has supported all of those policies. She is anchored to those policies. She cannot run from those policies. She supports high taxes. She supports big spending. She supports big government. And nothing she says or does or her campaign officials say will change any of that.
Yeah, and Angela, again, as a spokesperson for a cabinet level department, the Department of Education, you know that words matter and how you communicate words matter. Let me just read you this quote that we just saw from Kamala Harris. This is an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy.
That word salad would not have gotten her far on the Miss America stage, but it's terrifying that it might get her far. Seriously, those women are amazing. That's a separate conversation. But if that's what we're getting from Kamala in an advantageous situation, when she's got a friendly media, she's in a happy event with something big to celebrate. I don't want to take away from how wonderful it is to get those folks home, to bring those Americans back. If that's the Kamala we see, what about the Kamala we don't see? What happens when she doesn't have the binder, when she doesn't have the prompter, when she's having to negotiate on behalf of this country in foreign relations situations? I would be terrified about what comes out of her mouth then and what the ramifications are for this entire country.
Well, a point taken. And actually, listen, of course, it was a fantastic thing to see these families reunited with their loved ones. But wasn't this also an opportunity? I mean, if you really do want to be a statesman, if you really want to, be seen as a potential president of the United States, Akash, this would have been a great opportunity to say, by the way, there are Americans and innocent Israelis being held right now by terrorists since October 7th, and let's get those hostages home too. I call on Hamas to do that, or however you want to get it done. But instead of the word salad, how about actually show some leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, she's just unprepared for the job. She's unprepared when it comes to knowing what the job takes, to having the right positions, to being able to communicate to the American people. I mean, these are just very basic 101 skill set things that are required to be an effective president. She cannot do it. I think that's very, very clear. It becomes very clear every time, she's in any kind of unscripted environment. I don't think Donald Trump, frankly, should be afraid to debate Kamala Harris. He's got to be the one to pin her with these questions if the media won't do it. And again, I think the American people just see that every single time she gets up in any kind of scenario like that. And so the media should be creating more scenarios like that to ask her questions and ask her where she stands and what she believes, and can she truly be a statesman to represent us on the world stage? But if they won't do it, conservatives will. Yeah,
and Elaine, last word here, but it does feel like, they're sort of setting this up for 2020. Joe Biden was able to duck from a lot of very real media encounters because he was famously in the basement due to the pandemic, we were told. And it was revealed later that many of the interviews he conducted, he actually had notes in a teleprompter in front of him. Sort of feels like they're trying to recreate that magic.
Yeah, clearly the staff there is very skilled at keeping their candidate under wraps and not putting them in any kind of position where they actually have to speak off the cuff and tell us who they really are. They did that for 3.5 years with Joe Biden, and the American people front and center saw it. And the debate that he had with President Trump makes you wonder if it wasn't done on purpose by his own staff. But they were going to do everything they can to keep Kamala under wraps. I bet that she even tries to find a way to get out of debating President Trump if she can, but we'll see how that goes.
Interesting. We sure will. And it does make you wonder whether that very rare early debate was not planned out and on purpose. You're right. And whether she will face a debate. I know that President Trump specifically wants the debate between he and Vice President Harris to happen before any early voting begins. And I think that's a very smart demand, and he should stick to it.